Salutations everyone, this is Razor bringing you guys once again some multiplayer action, but what I'm going to be talking about today is story mode. Not specifically this game, but just in general. There was a 25-minute long speech at GDC, not even 2 weeks ago, Game Developers Conference for those of you who are not familiar, given by Riot Games narrative lead Tom Abernathy, a very distinguished game developer, as well as Microsoft Game Studios design lead Richard Rouse III. And in their speech, they noted how many gamers who play even the most story-driven titles don't actually finish them. We're not talking about, Call of Duty or Halo, where the majority of people buy the game just to play the multiplayer and might not, finish nor even touch the story mode. But games that are story driven, games that are purchased for the sole reason of playing and beating the story mode, most games which don't even have multiplayer games to begin with based off of the ones that they listed. And the speech titled A Death to the 3-Act Structure elaborated on game completion with some very interesting statistics from Valve based off of Steam achievements. Through these Steam achievements, they could, categorically put how many people have gotten so far into their games based off achievements, story-based achievements that they have not or have gotten. And these are, in the data that they give us, are completely story-driven games, and they don't look very good. They cite Mass Effect 2. 56% of gamers complete Mass Effect 2. A completely story-driven game that has no multiplayer, has no alternative modes, that everyone buys to play the story. And it's a sequel to a very popular title, so you would think that more people would complete this one than the first. And they don't have numbers on that, but 56% of people play Mass Effect 2, one of the best games of all time, one of the highest rated games of the past generation. Only 56% of people complete, just barely over half. BioShock Infinite, 53% of players completed BioShock Infinite. Batman Arkham City, 47%, only 47% of this great game. Only 47% of all people played it, and it's only 2 years removed from its predecessor, Batman Arkham Asylum. And this goes on and on. Mass Effect 3, one of the greatest games of all time. Only 42% of gamers completed it. Why are people buying these games if they're not going to beat the game? Mass Effect 3 has one of the best multiplayers I think ever created, but hardly any people, I think, bought the game for the multiplayer, if really any at all, especially on the first onset of the game. And I can understand why some particular titles aren't finished as much as others. For instance, they cite Skyrim, only 32% of people completed that game, and Borderlands 2, only 30% of people completed that game. Those are big games. Those are big, open world, lots of stuff to do games that would take way more hours than your typical, just run-of-the-mill structured, story-driven game, which has, chapters and levels and so on. Yeah, these are not structured in that way, so I can understand why only 32% of people beat Skyrim and 30% of people completed Borderlands. Although I've heard that if you don't want to do any of the side missions, you can beat Skyrim in just a few hours. But I can understand with how popular gaming is and how many people there are, most of them are not hardcore gamers. That's just a statistical fact. You cannot go any which way around it. Most people are not hardcore gamers. Most people don't put a lot of time or effort into their games. Game playing, that is. So I can understand why certain games would not be as completed as others, because it seems more of a daunting task to your casual player who sees all these side missions and all these numbers, and it's just too much for them, too much for a subset of people, which most of us I don't think would fall into. But let's take a look at Portal, the first Portal. Only 47% completed. Not the hardest game in the world, and by no means a very long game. It's been a while since I beat Portal, but playing it through a first time without having any experience whatsoever, just going through trial and error, I think you can beat Portal 1 in just 2 or 3 hours. Just by not being that great at it, but just keep, trudging along at the puzzles. I think that would only take, a few hours at the most, and still only 47% of people actually put in a few hours into such a critically acclaimed, like, in some people's eyes, groundbreaking game. It was a huge, pop culture phenomenon, Cake is a Lie, and, all that stuff. Yet, only 47% of people completed it. And these I think are really eye-opening numbers. I mean, there are certain games that most people buy for the multiplayer. Your Call of Duties, your Halos, your Battlefields. The biggest multiplayer-centric games out there. A large portion of people, not all, I've beaten every single Call of Duty storyline. I've beaten every single Battlefield storyline. I've, out of the not large, but out of the library of games that I have, there's only 2 that I have not completed. Not 100%, but not just beat the story mode. And that would be Lost Planet. I thought was super boring, super dumbed down versions of other games, and it lost me. I only have 1 achievement in that game. I probably put maybe an hour into it. Super boring. And the other would be Red Dead Redemption, a very critically acclaimed game that I don't know what the numbers are on that, but I only got a few hours into the game. I thought, it was just really boring, as I didn't like it. And I know I'm going to get some hate for that, but still, that's only 2 out of the, 60 some odd games that I have between just the 360 and the PS3. I'm not even going to go into my older catalog of games, which would, I think, exemplify this fact even more so, that I personally myself finish games. But I am, a hardcore gamer, if you want to use that really odd, lexicon that we've been, forcefully given. There's really no other language to use than what everyone else is familiar with. But I myself, I beat pretty much every game that I play, especially those that I put, at least 3 hours into. If I put a few hours into a game, I'm going to beat it. But I understand I am not, the norm, but I don't understand why people wouldn't want to play the games that they bought. Not get out as much of it as possible by 100%ing it and getting all the achievements. I get that. You want to get on with your lives and play other games and do other things, but when it comes to story-driven games, I think that they're right in this death to the 3-act structure. Now, I would say that their numbers, if they were available for console gaming, it wouldn't be this dramatically low. And here's my reason for this. Steam, I assume that they don't count games that were purchased and never played. I assume they're counting only games that were started in the first place, because I think if we take a look at the amount of games that people have purchased on Steam, most people haven't even played most of the games that they've bought, just based on how good the deals that people get on that service. I think that translates, as the cheaper things get, the less that you're losing if you're not getting the full experience. So console games themselves being, for the most part, being more expensive, I think would have a higher percentage of people completing their games. And with games that are specifically designed for console gamers in mind, I think would have a higher completion percentage than most PC games. That's just my theory. And I think there's a lot of reasons to think this way. But I still think that the numbers that Steam has given us can be extrapolated out to all platforms as a generalization. I still think most people don't finish their games no matter how they get them or how they play them. And that's really odd. I don't understand why that is. And I think that they're right. The 3-act structure is dying. I don't think it's dead. People still love these games. These games still sell a lot, but they don't seem to be played as much as your MOBAs or your MMOs or your multiplayer first-person shooter bases and, all the other popular games that come around with it. I'm not talking about outliers that are just, you can't compare them to anything else like Minecraft. But for the most part, people don't seem to be finishing their games. I personally don't understand it, and I submit to you guys, how much of the games that you play do you actually finish? Because according to the data that we have, at least from Steam, which like I said, I think is a good generalization for most platforms, most people don't finish their games. And most people for many games, and these are just the popular games that they have stats for. I would imagine that the lesser popular games have even a lower percentage of completion, just because people don't like them as much. They don't sell as much. So, what do you guys think? It's definitely interesting. I don't think that the story-driven game is dead. They still sell a lot. They're still very popular. I think as the Call of Duties and the Battlefields and the League of Legends of the world will still sell and people will play a lot, but I think there's still a spot for the Mass Effects and the Last of Us's and the Assassin's Creeds out there that are basically 100%, if not close to, story-driven games, and if not, at least the main reason that people purchase the games. But then we go, you guys think in the comments, and I will see you next time.